Did anyone know you were going to the game, other than the two defendants?
The defendant herself is determined to keep this information secret.
Whereby a defendant can't claim self-defense against an agent of the government.
Defendants will rise.
Your Honor, in light of the fact that this is the defendant's first major offense...
There has never been a written indictment of charges made against defendants.
One of the defendants, Mr. Barker, and I met at a social...
Commander, we're going to have the defendants moved up here in the morning.
Find the defendant guilty or not guilty of the charge made against him.
Find the defendant guilty of contempt of Congress.
Office about a week before.
Did anyone know you were going to the game, other than the two defendants?
I don't think so.
There's a problem. The defendant herself is determined to keep this information secret.
1789. Whereby a defendant can't claim self-defense against an agent of the government if that act is deemed a defense.
The defendants will rise.
Am I going to... I can't go. Your Honor, in light of the fact that this is the defendant's first major offense, that he has no prior criminal...
Prosecution presented no witnesses. There has never been a written indictment of charges made against defendants. And lastly, I protest against...
Lawyer, and you're here. One of the defendants, Mr. Barker, and I met at a social occasion once.
Where?
Commander, we're going to have the defendants moved up here in the morning.
Thank you, sir.
And I'll have divisions.
Do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty of the charge made against him?
This is Dalton Trumbo. We find the defendant guilty of contempt of Congress.
The above entitled action, find the defendant, Lawrence M. Powell, not guilty of the crime of assault by...
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree.
Is awarded to plaintiff. Defendant is ordered to pay child support to plaintiff in the sum of $125.
We won't do better.
Your Honor, the defendant is willing to plead guilty to an amendment.
There's nothing to it!
Defendant did commit an adulterous act with a sheep. It's most distasteful in view of the fact...
In his uncle's toothpaste.
I first murder trial. I was more frightened than the defendant. First time I...
Your Honor, please instruct the defendant that he cannot disrupt these proceedings.
Fine. Bailiff will take the defendant into custody. Bail is hereby rescinded. Your Honor, you, Mr.
This case would not, in my judgment, warrant a conviction of the defendants by trial jury of any offense whatever. I order the defendants to be released.
In view of the testimony and the default of defendant Cleaver Creighton Cheney, the court grants to the plaintiff Cheney.
The people of the state of California versus Thelma Jordan, defendant, case 124.
I'm with Milton, Heath, and Barzoon, and there's a very good possibility that I'm about to catch a triple homicide defendant who also happens to be one of...
2,200. The bad news is the defendants have no money. Bankrupt.
Now, let's just answer my question. Now, Miss Brown, you are an old friend of the defendant, Bertram Cates.
We're engaged to be married.
Your Honor, the stress the defendant has been under is so great that he is not aware.
I am aware.
Your Honor. And that would be?
Based on the defendant's prior conviction and the extreme possibility of flight due to the...
18th of February, the defendant, Michael Lynch, and an unknown associate entered the premises of Super X, a video game company.
Part of that photograph.
This is a photograph of the defendant's signature on a canceled check. Now here is an enlargement of that same...
Had him. Had Jimmy? And they were going to... Other defendants could corroborate their case. They'd let them walk. That's what I heard.
Killing of one's father. The defendant is the young man that you see over there, Mike Lassiter.
Mr. Buchanan, you live on the same street as the defendant.
I do.
And you were an
Well, I'm a lawyer.
This is Ensign Keith, Lieutenant Kiefer.
Keith, you're the co-defendant.
Yes, sir.
And you, Mr. Kiefer?
Mrs. Riley, when you saw the defendants, were you wearing your glasses?
Yes, I was.
Over here,
Tomorrow night at 7:30. At which time I expect you and the defendant to be here and ready to go to trial. In the meantime, the county detectives...
30 years.
Marshals, you may take the defendant into custody.
No electrocution?
No. The hands of the defendant, Thomas Chambers, and that is in fact the blood.
Self-defense. Therefore, the defendant will not be held to answer these charges at trial. He's free to go. Court adjourned.
Rosenberg and Jensen.
Great. We'll sue your ass for the next 20 years. You'll be named as a defendant. Oh, this is...
this happen tomorrow? All the other cases I worked on have only been paper defendants. I never knew